Good to see y'all this evening. I got to ask you a question, and this may sound silly to you, but do y'all have strong tolerance? You might be thinking, strong tolerance, what does that mean? Can I eat anything I want to and it not make me sick, not give me heartburn, not make my stomach hurt? You know, that's a tolerance, that's a type like that. But also, you know, whenever I was working in the factory, the one thing we did is we was working on machine shops, and we'd have micrometers that we'd use, and we'd use calibers and things like that, and we would have tolerances, and those tolerances we'd use, it would tell how far you can be up or down in that tolerance before you reject it. And a lot of times we would have 5 thousandths tolerance, plus or minus 5 thousandths tolerance, and if it was out of that level, it was something that you threw away. You scrapped it because it was out of tolerance, is what they would call it. So to give y'all a thought of what it is, if you was to take a human hair, that's not long enough. If you was to take a human hair and you was to look at that human hair and you got that down and you really measured that, most human hairs are going to be close to 5 thousandths tolerance, is what it is. And you may say, well, how do you know that? Well, in my class that I used to teach, I would teach students all the time, and I would teach them how to use micrometers, and I would teach them how to use their calibers, and I would say, and they would say, we don't understand it. But if I got that child up there and I said, all right, pull a hair out of your head. And they would all of my students would be up there, and I would give every one of them a set of calibers, and I'd say, I want you to measure it. And you'd look, and them kids, they'd pull, I can't get one out. And I'd reach up there, and I'd grab hold of it, and I'd pull it right out. And I'd say, here's your hair, and I'd drop it right before they got it. And I'd say, get you another one. The reason I would do that, because it would always get their attention, because they was always thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to pull every one of my hairs out of my head. So they'd pull that hair out and they would measure it. And believe it or not, some people would have like 3 thousandths tolerance, but never anybody of their hair, never anybody less. And nobody would ever have over 5 thousandths, even people that they would say, oh, my hair's real thick. It didn't matter. That was about the limit of what they would have. And you look at it, and whenever you look at that hair, you can just barely see it. And if you lay it in the wrong place, you can't see it. But God knows every one of our hairs on our head. Do you know why? God has no tolerance. See, the Bible tells us that God's the same yesterday and today and forever. God expects out of us for us to be living the best way we can. And I think about this because I want y'all to think about this. How many of y'all have pain in your shoulder right now? All right. Now, how many of y'all have pain in your other shoulder right now? You see what I mean? You know what we do? Whenever we've got pain in something, you know what we tend to not do? We tend not to use it. You know why? Because it hurts every time. And they call it, whenever you go into the hospital, they say, what is your pain tolerance right now? Well, if we're hurting real bad, all of us men says, oh, I'm about 3 or 4. Well, what are you doing here then? Well, no, I'm really bad. But then you get somebody that's got a kidney stone. Any of y'all ever had a kidney stone? Well, buddy, if you've had a kidney stone and that thing's moving on you, what is your pain tolerance? And you're laying in the floor, you're crying, you're balled up in the ball, and you're saying, I'm at 10. You know why? Because your pain tolerance can only handle so much. And y'all, I want you to realize a lot of times, whether we've got a knee problem or a hip problem or a headache, every one of us, we've got tolerance that we tolerate all the time. But I'm going to tell you something that I want y'all to think about. How about our tolerance that we have whenever we're standing around somebody and they're cussing? Oh, y'all, I'm going to tell you, I stepped out yesterday out of my vehicle, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to get on the soapbox, Brother Gary, but I'm going to tell you what bothers me. What bothers me is whenever somebody gets out of their vehicle and they just assume that everybody in the area cusses like a I'm not going to say sailor. I'm sorry, Jeff. He corrected me on that because Jeff was a sailor for 28 years. But they just cuss every breath that comes out of their mouth, and they have no regard for nobody else, even children. And they just expect everybody to not, to say anything that they want to. And you know what we do? We have to tolerate it. or do we? You know, I'll tell you this, my wife, she's got to the point that whenever I used to go to ball games and people would be sitting up there cussing, my wife would poke me and she'd say, don't do it, Steve, don't do it, don't do it. And I wasn't playing preacher on them. I was playing like, if you don't shut that junk up, I'm going to come up there. You know what I mean? That's what I wanted to do. I'm going to come up there, and if I can't whip you, I'm going to go get Jimmy Weaver. And I'm going to let Jimmy come and whip you, because there's no need in that. But you know what tends to happen? Our tolerance just kind of gets to the point that we tolerate it. Y'all, I'm going to tell you, I'm sick of tolerating stuff. I really am. I'm sick of tolerating sin in my own life. I'm sick of tolerating, people not being on fire for God. And I'm talking to myself too. I'm sick and tired of tolerating things that God said separates us from Him. You think about it. We tolerate selfish people. And we say, oh, that's just the way they are. No, that's being selfish. You know, I'll tell you this, there was times in my life that I've been a selfish daddy and a selfish husband, that I wanted to go and hunt, or I wanted to go fish, or I wanted to do something. I want my time, and I was selfish whenever I shouldn't be selfish. And y'all may not be like that, and if you're not, then I need to come and sit under a class with you, because I'll tell you, there's times that I'm selfish. And listen to this, we tolerate lying. Oh, that's just a little old white lie. No, it's a lie. A lie is a lie. But we get to the point that we tolerate. I'm going to tell you something else. Y'all are going to love this. We tolerate gossip. We tolerate whenever somebody starts gossiping, and the next thing you know, we may not be participating, but we have leaned over a little bit to make sure we can hear it, to make sure. She said, what? And you know what we mean? What are we doing? We're tolerating what's going on. And I'm going to tell you, we're just as bad as the people that's doing it. But I'm sitting here telling you that if we're not careful, y'all are going to love this. You know, me and my wife have, the best of my knowledge, me and my wife have, in our marriage, we've been married for going to be 28 years. I think next week after next, something like that. I'll figure it out before then. But for all that time, and the best I remember, I have rode to church with my wife 4 times in 28 years, 4 times. Out of those 4 times, my wife has left me at church twice out of those 4 times because she forgot that I was riding with her. Y'all might think that's funny, but it ain't too funny whenever you get left. Matter of fact, she was telling somebody a story the other day and said I got home and me and the kids was there getting supper ready, and all of a sudden I looked and Jack and Rose Smart was pulling up in my driveway, and she walked out there. What are y'all doing? They said, we had to bring Steve home, because she run off and left me. And she was just telling that story the other day. But you know what? We tolerate people being late all the time, because in my wife's family, all of her family's always been late. Always. And so I've taught my children since they were small. I'd say, listen now, kids, not gossiping, I'm telling the truth. Kids, your mama's always been late. Her mama's late, her daddy's late, her grandma's late, granddaddy's late, grandpa, great-grandpa, all of them's always been late. I'm sure aunt and uncle's late, but the whole bunch has been late. And kids, I don't want you to be late. Don't do that. And I'm going to tell you what I did. I pounded it in them. And now they leave so much early. I'm saying, what are you leaving so early for? Well, Daddy, I don't want to be late. You follow me? So I realized, even though they could have tolerated that in their life, if you ingrain something, let me tell you, if you ingrain good things in people's life enough, you know what? You don't have to tolerate bad. But what we tend to do is we tolerate the bad, and then whenever we see the good, we pat them on the back for it. But if we train if we train the people we work with to be good, you know what they'll do? They'll be good. People rise to the occasion that you put in front of them. And if you don't believe me, you try it. Jeff, you think about your kids that you have in your softball. If you go out there and you say, all right, just throw the ball around, hit it if you want to, I'll catch it. Y'all can run. You don't have to run that fast if you don't want to. You know what they're going to do? They're going to be a sloppy, sorry ball team. And if you tolerate them being that, that's what they're going to do. But if you get out there and say, all right, If you miss 2 balls, you're running laps out here. If you don't sprint to first base and you stop before you get there, you are running, buddy. You're going to run it until your tongue falls out. That's what they do. That's what they tell you. You can get you a drink of water so you don't pass out, but I'm going to run you again. And because you don't want to tolerate mediocre. Y'all, we can't tolerate being mediocre Christians. We've got to be, listen to this. I can't tolerate fake people. If somebody's a fake, it's going to come out and it's going to show. And also, I cannot tolerate and have tolerance for people that fake like they love me. I know that I'm a hard person to love just by nature. It's obvious. But if you fake like you love me, it's going to come out eventually. You know why? Because fake always comes out. So I don't want to have a fake person. And I'm going to tell you something else that's hard to tolerate. It's hard to tolerate people that are weak in the faith. And it is even harder to tolerate me when I am weak in the faith. Y'all, I want y'all to know something, that right now I am weak in my faith. Brother Steve, you shouldn't be telling that because you're our leader. No, I'm your leader. I'm real. I'm going to tell you, I don't put on rose-colored glasses for y'all. If I'm struggling, I'll tell you if I'm struggling. If I'm on the mountaintop, I'll tell you, man, I'm excited about, and listen, I'm excited about what God's going to do, but I'm going to tell you, my faith is weak right now because I don't have clear vision and clear direction what God is doing right now. But the good thing about it that I have good tolerance in is that I know that God is in control and God is going to bring out good through everything that we are walking around saying it's bad. God's going to use it for His glory. He uses everything for His glory. God is good like that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to tolerate. I'm going to tolerate the weakness. I'm going to tolerate the weak Christians. I'm going to tolerate the things that I'm sitting there thinking, man, why am I feeling like this? I'm going to tolerate them because I know that joy is coming in the morning. I know that God is in control and God's going to do a great thing. I know He's going to do it in His church. The part that's hard for me to have the tolerance on is I always say, God, am I leading this church in the right direction? God, am I leading these people? Am I feeding? Listen, all that God asked Peter to do was to feed His sheep. Told him 3 times there on the side of the ocean, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my lamb. All I want you to do is just feed them. And if you feed them, He didn't say, but now Peter, some of these people are not going to eat. Some of these people are going to fake it. Some of these people are not going to ever get on fire. Some of these people are going to walk down and talk to you, and they're still going to go to hell. See, it's hard because I don't want to, you know what I don't want a tolerance for? I don't want a tolerance, and I don't ever want to get to the point that I lose my passion for the lost. I don't want to tolerate having somebody that's around me that's lost and I'm not reaching them for the Lord. I was stopped by a guy's house. He called me and he said, hey man, if you don't mind, I'd like for you to come over here and I need you to help me do something. And I said, all right, and went to his house. Whenever I got there, he had overdone it big time. Him and his wife had overdone it, and he had a big old pile of corn out there. It's 9:30 at night. He said, if you don't mind, he said, I need your help. I said, all right, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to shuck that corn. I said, all right. I said, do you want me to silk it too? And he said, I do. He said, I need help with it. I said, all right. And I said, well, what are you going to do with all this corn? He said, I'm going to put every bit of it in the freezer. And I said, that sounds fine with me. I said, I just want to know how long I was going to be here. He said, till it's done. There's a guy that pulled up. And he sat down in a seat there, and this man started showing me, and I looked at him, and I saw his eye that it looked like it's bad. I saw that on the side of his head that he had something there, and I said, man, what happened to you there? It looked like he got kicked by a horse or something like that. And whenever he looked, he said, I've got cancer right there. And he took off his cap, and he said, yeah, I've got a spot of cancer right there on my head too. And I was thinking, man, put that back on. Now, but I didn't say that. I just looked at it like all of you would. He put it back on, and I said, you know something? I said, you must really be strong in the faith You must be a Christian person. You must really love the Lord for that right there not to bother you enough that you showed me. He got up out of his seat, walked straight to his vehicle, and left. I thought, wow, what happened? Man, it devastated me, because most of the time whenever you see somebody that's like that, and whenever he got up, I said, what did I say? And he said, oh, Joe can't take stuff like that. He said he can't. I said, man, you know, I was just encouraging him in his faith. And he said, I said, well, is he a Christian? He said he goes to church every time the door's open. Every time the doors is open, he said, but he's never said he was a Christian. Never. The reason I'm passionate about what I do is because every time a door is open, people walks in those doors, but that don't mean that they're a Christian. Here this man is almost 80 years old. And I was just going to encourage him, wouldn't you? That's what you'd have done. You'd have encouraged him, man, you must be a strong Christian that you're able to talk about this and show this. And I thought I was edifying him, and he was gone. Y'all, so often we feel like we're doing good, and I thought about that, and I told him, I said, can I come back over here tomorrow if George